think you can go ahead and shove us off here, Matt, and hopefully we'll have a couple other people join shortly.
Yeah. So, folks, welcome back. The last time we came together as a chapter, it was, I want to say, April 13th. So it's been about 5 months. We hoped at this point in time that we could be looking at meeting in person again, and then Delta came along, and well, here we are. So I want to welcome everybody back. To introduce myself, my name is Matt Henry. I'm the chapter president. In my day job, I'm the program director for the IT Service and Support Degree Program at Wake Technical Community College, where we are hopefully creating the next generation of level 1 service professionals. I would like to go round robin and let everybody on the board kind of introduce themselves. I can either go with my Brady Bunch view, or I can let you do it yourselves. If anybody's feeling brave, I can call on you. This is what I do for a living.
I'll go.
Okay.
I'm Amy Corliss. I am VP of Membership and standing as secretary. I had worked over with Richard Kelso over at North Carolina DIT, but recently just transferred as the program manager, rolling out KCS or refreshing KCS over at Medallia.
Ooh, cool.
So since I got called out, I'll go next. I'm Richard Kelso. I am the Director of IT Service Excellence for the North Carolina Department of Information Technology. It's one long string of words just to say I'm head process nerd. I lost Amy, but I still love her, and she is fantastic at knowledge. So Medallia stole a great resource, and I love what I do. So happy to be here. And I am the VP of Programs. I was lucky enough to drag Roy into all this crazy shenanigans that we have going on tonight. I'll kick it off to Tom because he laughed at that one.
Oh, thanks. My name's Tom Permerano, VP of Sponsors. I am in the process of changing hats, literally and figuratively. I'm currently wearing my Cornell hat, which I will be trading in for an NC State hat. Going from Big Red Bears to the Wolfpack. I've been down in North Carolina now for 2 years, decided to trade the snow for the warmth. Josh, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, everyone. My name is Josh Darter. For Tri HDI, I'm the VP of the Social Media and Communications and I currently work at Red Hat as the Tier 2 IT Manager for our internal IT support team, and been there for about 5 years now. Super excited to be a part of the board, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
All right. Thank you, folks. We do have one other board member who is not with us. I've reached out, and we'll hopefully hear back. Hopefully he'll join us. Jake McSwain is our treasury person. So in the big picture, we are still in the process of pulling up. Again, when we were last together in April, my hope was that we could announce that we were doing an awards banquet in November, and Delta came along and threw all that sideways. Currently, I'm hoping, unless Mu turns out to be a bigger nightmare, at the beginning of 2022, we will start having meetings in physical locations. So right now, it's just kind of welcome back. Before I have Richard formally present Roy, does anybody have any questions about the chapter? Since the board is here, we're kind of talking state of health of the organization. Does anybody have any questions about Tri HDI that they need or want answered? Overwhelming silence. Yeah, Dorian, look, I teach for a living. I'm used to it. You can actually weaponize it. If I need a response, I just silent long enough and wait, and eventually somebody will peep in. But if y'all don't have any questions, I'll give it one more awkward pause. All right, I'd like to hand off to Richard. Richard is our VP of Programs, and he has arranged our program for today. So, Richard, I'm going to hand off to you.
Thank you, Matt. It's with great joy I get to introduce Roy Atkinson. who is the CEO of Clifton Butterfield LLC. He's a writer, industrial analyst, and speaker, and he is going to present to us this evening why employee experience matters to IT. So without further ado, you want me to kick off the video first, Roy, or do you want to do a little bit more of an introduction?
Yeah, why don't you kick the video off and then we'll come back with the presentation.
Bear with me and fire that right up.
Thank you for putting that on. I love to do these little videos to introduce the presentation, a little bit about the subject. And so those are just some of the issues, of course, we're all grappling with around the world and trying to get ourselves into whatever the new normal might be. We don't know, do we? As Tom was, or as Matt was saying, if Mu does something, then life will change, and Delta changed our approaches and so forth and so on. So our expectations are all over the board right now, and we have to be careful, take care of each other and ourselves. And I'm going to start by just thanking Tri HDI. And I have a question. And my question is, if Yoda were the chairperson of this chapter, what would the name of the chapter be?
Do
Anybody?
HDI.
Bingo. Why? Because there is no
There is
try.
no try. There is only
See
do.
that? I figured it out. This is now there's an insight into Roy's brain. Those of you who know me will understand that entirely. And these are the things that I think about. So we're going to talk about why employee experience matters to IT. It matters to everybody, actually. But I'd like to go through some of the topics I'm going to bring into this presentation. And if you have questions along the way, I will pause. I have to flip back and forth between the meeting and the presentation. I can't look at both at the same time. But put them in the chat, and we'll get to those. And there are a couple of times I'm going to pause and ask you to put something in the chat, and we'll take a look at those. So we're going to start by answering the question, what is employee experience? Because not everybody has a good handle on what it is. What aspects of the organization are involved? For which of those is IT critical? IT is involved all over the place, and we'll talk more about that, but for which is it critical? We're going to look a lot at some research from a company called Happy Signals. They do amazing work in gathering stats on employee experience, end user experience with IT. is one of the things they're all about. And full disclosure, I partner up with Happy Signals on some work. So happy to have those folks on board, and glad that I'm able to leverage their research as we go along. So happiness is good business. We're going to talk about that. Your end users are not all alike. And see, you thought they were all brunette, 5'3", and wore glasses. No, they're not. And there are some profiles that you might be able to use. You'll probably see the patterns here and be able to apply them to your own organizations when I talk about that. How dramatically can IT affect employee experience? We're going to talk about all the tech that's all over your organizations now and how that's even increasing. And measuring employee experience, very important. If you're not sure about what metrics you should be using, I'm going to talk about that. We're going to talk about SLAs and XLAs, or SLAs and SCLAs, whichever you prefer. I'm just going to mention digital transformation, and here's why, and I'm going to say this again when I get there. You cannot speak on any subject in 2021 and not mention digital transformation. It's like artificial intelligence is so 2020, and then it's all digital transformation now. But actually, I'm a fellow at the Institute for Digital Transformation, so I do talk about digital transformation quite a bit. And we'll see if there are any conclusions we can come to about all of these different things and how that might help you in your endeavors and your dealings with your organizations. So that's a pretty full agenda. I won't go too fast. I want to take it relatively slow so that we can get coverage here. But let's start off with that definition. This is from IBM Smarter Workforce and Workhuman. They did a big study working on employee experience. This is from a couple of years ago. And they basically set up a bunch of definitions. This is their definition of what employee experience is. I would even take it one step farther, and I would say it is the set of perceptions that employees have about their experiences. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different areas that contribute to employee experience. And one of the things I want to say right off the bat is that employee experience is not having pizza on Friday. It's not having an on-site brew pub. It's not having a pool table. Those things might contribute a little bit to employee engagement and employee experience, but basically the effects of those things are short-term. And if you look at the set of perceptions that employees have about their experiences at work, with their response to interactions with the organizations, things like a pool table really don't go very far and last very long. So if that's what you're thinking about when you think about employee experience, that is a tiny, tiny part. And we're going to go through a lot of the elements that have to do with employee experience. But I should say, by the way, that this presentation can be available. If you want it, I have my contact information at the end. I'll be happy to send it out to you. And I will also have some resources that we will post in the chat toward the end of the presentation, pointing to the research and some of the other resources that I'm talking about here. So you'll be able to go look at the stuff. All right, so what are the things that are involved with employee experience? It's very similar to customer experience in that it's a journey. It is a full set of perceptions from beginning to end. So what's the first perception you have of the company that you work at? Did you learn about it through a website? Did your friends talk about it? Did you see an ad online? Did you see a posting on LinkedIn? How did you first become aware of that organization? That's where it starts. And then it goes through all the relationships that you develop with the organization throughout the process of applying and interviewing, reviewing your compensation and benefits package. Is that commensurate with the competition, and so forth and so on? Policies that they have, are they restrictive? I was reading an article the other day that I found exceedingly troubling. And it was having to do with one company that installed, when they sent people home, They installed a piece of software, and the name of the software should be a tip-off. It's called Sneak. And essentially, it goes beyond keyloggers and stuff like that. It takes a picture with the webcam every minute of the person using the computer. And then it posts those photographs to a gallery that's visible to everybody in the system. So I don't know what's going on there, but goodness my, what kind of policies do you have to wrap around that? What was the hiring process like? What was the onboarding process like? And IT has some specific things there. So all of these different things along the way, every time you interact with the organization, with your managers, with your workmates, with the policies and with the tools and technologies that you have, all the way through until it's time to say goodbye and you leave. That's the journey of employee experience. So there's a ton of things involved in that. And now let's look at specifically where IT's role is really critical. Policies for sure. How you use your accounts, whether you can use your hardware for personal use or whether it's restricted, what the compliance requirements are. Do you have monitoring software on your machine? How are you expected to work? All of those policies that have to do with interacting with the technology and with each other online. What software can you install or not? What are the storage policies? Where is the stuff supposed to go? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Onboarding, IT has a critical role there. And one of the things that is a big tip-off for that is your first day of work, you probably walk in and you expect to have a machine to be able to work on. Sometimes that doesn't work out, but that could be a very bad experience for an employee coming in, and that would be directly responsibility of IT to put that machine on the desk or to make sure that if they're using their own machine that it's configured properly and has the VPN or however it is that you're connecting into internal systems. What's your workspace like? And IT, of course, may have something to do with that, especially if you're working in an office space. Do you have the proper connections? Do you have the proper setup? Is it ergonomic? Do you have a keyboard where you need it? Do you have a mouse that works? All of that stuff. And tools and technologies. What kind of technology are you using? I remember when I started one job, I had a used laptop. It seemed like it was about a foot thick, but it was probably only an inch or two. Well, more than an inch. It was a big, thick, heavy old laptop. And I emphasize heavy because I was traveling and lugging that thing through airports was no fun at all. So it was kind of clunky technology, and it was a couple of years before that got replaced. It was no fun at all. That was company issued hardware. So that really counts. And the type of applications. I remember doing a project where we were going to upgrade a particular system where I was working, and we were looking at the tools in a similar fashion. What were the competitors like? And we went to some customers for each of the tools. And we went to one place where, the people just hated it because the checkbox on this page that they had to check off as they went through their work for the day was on the right side, but on half of the pages, it was on the left side. And so they had to think about it. As they went through the tool, they had to think about where's the checkbox where's the next field I fill in? What happens when I hit tab? Where does it go? Oh, I lost it. Okay, I have to go find it now because it's not where I expected it to be. And they really didn't like the tool. Guess what? We didn't buy it. So it's that kind of interaction that you're talking about when you look at employee experience. So here is the report, and you'll get a link to this so you can go look at the full report from Happy Signals. It's basically a look at 8 different areas of end user experience with IT. And there they all are. The hardware, a computer and the mobile devices. What's it like to do remote work? Is it difficult? Is it easy? What's it like? What's it like to interact with IT in a sense of collaborating? What's it like to get support? and so forth and so on. And it's a great report, and it's cumulative. It builds up very rapidly. And currently the H1, the first half of 2021, which goes from December 2020, I think up until the end of April 2021, is the current report that you'll be able to go get. And that report consists of something like 948,000 responses. So almost 1 million responses. That's a pretty big sample size. And it's 130 different countries that this is in. It's absolutely astounding how this accumulates information, because the tool that Happy Signals has allows end users to interact with simple questions to answer on each of these aspects. So they can just, click something every time they interact with IT, and it registers a response. It's absolutely pretty cool. So some of the key findings, woohoo. Some unexpected things. I love unexpected findings. Company size. The bigger the company, the harder it is to please IT end users. Interesting, huh? Why would that be? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to also digging into that a little bit. We're going to find yet another unexpected result that relates directly to that point. End users in some industries are easier to please than others. Well, yeah, that makes sense. End users in happier countries are harder to please. So, there's every year there's the happiest country on earth survey that's done, and generally the Scandinavian countries do quite well. Happy Signals, by the way, is based in Finland, so they're one of the tough countries. The happier the country, the harder the IT end users are to please. And when I saw that get posted, I thought about that a lot. And my response to it was, well, people in happy countries like Denmark and Sweden and Finland are used to having things work smoothly. The trains run on time. The public services are, so the streets are clean. Everything seems to work pretty well, which is why they're happy countries. And so an interruption in their IT life is a big deal. So they are harder to please. It's fascinating, isn't it? End users rate IT touch points that involve human interaction more highly than purely technological touch points. And I'm going to come back to that one. But that, from my perspective, in dealing with people who do IT support and do IT service management, that's a good thing. That the human aspects are not getting lost, that people are not abandoning them, and they're just expecting all the solutions to be done with technology. Although we can do so much with technology now that it's pretty mind-boggling, and we're getting into the era of self-healing. Project I'm working on right now has to do with getting beyond shift left and going into the self-healing realm. So that's pretty fascinating stuff. So we talked about that companies, the larger companies are less happy than the smaller ones when it comes to interacting with IT. But in companies with more than 5,000 employees, outsourced service desks are performing better than internal ones. Now, Happy Signals, what they say about this is that they think that it makes sense from the perspective of outsourced desks, because that's their business, is to provide service desk. They're more likely to be able to provide services globally. They're more likely to be able to be in the correct time zone. And they may also have the capability to implement more efficient channels and more channels to communicate with end users. I think it's a notch deeper than that. I think employees in large organizations have different expectations. And remember, experience as measured, your perceptions, as we said at the top in definition of employee experience, it's perceptions. And perceptions have a lot to do with the difference between the your expectation and the actual experience itself. And so I think it might have to do with employees in large organizations having a little bit lower expectations than people in smaller organizations because they don't know everybody. Things tend to be kind of distant. When you let's say you make a request of HR and maybe you get an answer a couple of weeks later. It's not the same in smaller companies. So harder to please people in larger organizations. They have different expectations. Okay. If a company has fewer than 5,000, their happiness is on average about 12 points higher than companies with more than 25,000 employees. Pretty interesting, huh? And yet the service desk is a little bit skewed toward the bigger companies. The outsourced service desks are competing successfully against the internal service desks at companies that might not be as large. Fascinating stuff. Specifically, 33% of companies that have less than 5,000 employees have outsourced their service desk, whereas up to 73% of companies with more than 5,000 have outsourced the service desk. So bigger the company, the more likely the service desk is outsourced. When the service desk is outsourced, it's actually better in some ways. And there are specific measurements in that report that you can look at and see where the outsourced service desks are better, where the internal service desks are better. How are they responding? How are they changing things in response to end user experience? Fascinating stuff. I love this stuff. I eat this for breakfast. So I'm going to flip over to the interface so I can see the chat. And which one of these 8 areas do you think is the lowest rated touch point? Which one is the lowest rated touch point of those 8?
Collaboration with IT.
Okay. Interesting. Germans are the hardest to please. Ja. Das ist die Wahrheit. And if you know what I said, you're hard to please. No, just kidding. Oh, people are saying the office environment. Interesting. Interesting. All right. One more second or two, and then I'm going to flip back over and I'll show you what the answer is. All right. What is the lowest rated IT touch point is the question. A lot of you said office environment. Some of you said collaboration. Some of you said support services. There's the ratings by the happiness score, as it's called. And you can see a couple that have minus signs in front of them. And you may notice that the one that is the biggest minus sign is the portal. As I was going through the different elements of this, I did mention the fact that human interactions tend to score higher than interactions that are strictly with technology. Well, portal is one of those places where people are specifically interacting with technology. They're just going to a portal and getting whatever services are available. Whereas the high scores here, the highest score of anything in the 8 touch points is collaboration with IT. That's maybe surprising. And second highest is support services. Now, we would like to think, those of us who are involved in service management and technical support would like to think that we do a really good job of working with end users and making sure that their needs are met. And there's a pretty good indication from all of those hundreds of thousands of responses that, in fact, support services is doing very well. And there's going to be another indicator of that a little bit later on we'll talk about as well. So pretty cool, huh? Human interactions score much higher than the technological. And here the indicator is the portal. So here's another stat: 423,000 people, end users, rate their responses for IT incidents. How was that experience? Was it good, bad? How did it go? And it is currently at a 1.5-year high. So the pandemic has actually raised the level of satisfaction, of happiness with the response to IT incidents. So support, as we know from looking at all the things that have been able to be accomplished during the pandemic, support's doing a great job. So everybody who is involved with support in any way, shape, or form, reach around, pat yourself on the back a little bit, because you're doing a fabulous job. And there's an indicator of it, right? And 423,000 people think so. And I think I saw something somebody had a question about the Happy Signals report not having much of a USA response. That's because they've been in Europe a lot longer. They are just really ramping up here in the US now. So you're going to start, in the future reports, you'll start to see a lot more response from the US. Some more key findings. End users report an average lost work time of 2 hours and 50 minutes for IT incidents. So let's think about that for a second. What does it feel like to have your ability to work impaired for nearly 3 hours? 3 hours is not a whole long time. Of course, it depends on what the incident is, but that's the average that end users are reporting, 2 hours and 50 minutes. But let's look at it this way. Think about what is the average number of incidents that your organization has in a day, in an 8-hour workday, or a 24-hour day, however your organization works, and multiply that by nearly 3 hours each one, and you begin to see what the impact is. That there is a metric that almost no one uses, and I'm going to come back to this, and I'm going to show you how it works. It's called interrupted user minutes, and that's kind of an exercise in interrupted user minutes. 3 hours each times the whole entire number of, and it would not even be the number of incidents, it would be the number of users affected. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Speed of service is the top determinant for end user satisfaction. How fast are you responding, and how fast are you getting it fixed with an incident? And how fast are you responding to a request, if that's what it's about? This doesn't say incidents specifically. It's with support services. So speed of service is a big deal. IT should tailor support services to different needs of end users. I talked about this at the beginning, how we're going to look at some different profiles of people in your organization. And looking at those profiles is going to indicate a specific approach, which you may or may not want to take. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And we'll look at happiness being good business. So we forge ahead. Happiness is good business. This is a fascinating set of statistics. Jacob Morgan, if you don't know, there's a dynamic duo in the world of experience, customer experience, employee experience. Jacob Morgan and Blake Morgan. Blake is prolific. She is just all over the place in terms of customer experience. She has also done a lot of work with IT and digital transformation. And Jacob Morgan is her spouse. And here's some stats that he's worked with Qualtrics, big company, Qualtrics, and surveys. Companies that invest heavily in employee experience 11.5 times more often on Glassdoor's best places to work. That's fascinating, isn't it? Almost 4.5 times as often in LinkedIn's most in-demand employers, over 2 times as often in Forbes' list of world's most innovative companies, and twice as much in the customer satisfaction index. But the big one that you might want to take back and show to your leadership is that companies that invest in employee experience are 4 times more profitable than those that do not. 4 times more profitable. It's fascinating. That's from an employee experience standpoint. There's also great information out there that looks at employee engagement. And employee engagement is part of the total employee experience. It's how willing we are to interact. Maybe we're working a little bit of extra time. Maybe we're taking part in company programs more than our workmates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our engagement is heavy with the organization. And you can look at that information and a Gallup survey that's out. I didn't link that in the resource document, but it's easy enough to find. You can look at the Gallup information about employee engagement, and it's a big, serious report. So check that out as well. So here's the different profiles that the end user information tends to fall out into. First one is the doer. They're the kind of the power user. They can do it themselves. They can look at the problem. They can figure out how to solve it, or give them a little bit of information, give them a little bit of guidance. They're good. They can fix it and keep going. The prioritizer says, IT is not my job. You take care of it. And that can be kind of a pain. But there's a lot of organizations like, let's say, healthcare. If I'm a medical doctor, I don't want to stop and troubleshoot my iPad that I use for work. I don't have the time for that. And I'm taking money out of the hospital or healthcare facility if I do that. I've got to see patient every 15 minutes or I'm not getting my work done. And so I don't have the time to stop. So that's the prioritizer. I do this job, not IT. And that's about 20% of the workforce. Supported, not really comfortable with tech. They really need to have their hand held. And the trier needs help, but sometimes they don't know it. So they can be a little bit dangerous. They're going to go ahead and try to do it themselves, but they may get lost along the way. So as you can see, more than half of the end users fit into they can follow an instruction and fix it themselves, the doer profile, but about 45% putting the other 3 profiles together there, about 45% really not good candidates for that kind of approach. So think hard about how you're providing self-help, or if you're providing self-help, and how much your organization wants to invest in it. I'm a strong proponent of self-help, but it's got to be done really well, and it has to work, and it has to be intuitive and straightforward for people to get it. And I know that Amy knows what I'm talking about because she's a knowledge management person. So it has to work right. So here is, I said that I was going to demonstrate for you a little bit about interrupted user minutes. And here's a direct way where IT has a huge effect on employee experience. So you got a company, it's 30,000 people. And there have been a couple of university studies within the last decade that have said employees are devoting about 30% of their time to email. It's probably a little bit less than that now because of Teams and Slack and some of the other tools that we're using. Email is losing out to those, but a little bit. But let's say it's 30% in this particular organization. So there's an email outage enterprise-wide, 10 minutes. It's a small speed bump, basically, right? Small speed bump? Okay, let's look at it. It's 10 minutes down times 30,000 employees. That's 300,000 interrupted user minutes. That's how that metric works. Number of minutes times number of affected employees, 300,000 interrupted user minutes. 30% of that, because they're in email 30% of the time, is 90,000 interrupted user minutes. 90,000 minutes is 1,500 hours, or 187 and a half 8-hour work days of work lost because of a 10-minute email outage. So either people are going to have to stay late, or they're going to have to go back and recover some things that were lost, or they may not know if the information they sent arrived. They may have to go back and follow up with that. It's a huge amount of work. So IT can have a huge effect on people's experiences in doing their jobs. And this is a classic illustration of how that can be. That's a big smack. 187 and a half work days in an organization. And the tools and technologies now are everywhere, right? You've got cloud technologies, and you've got network connected HVAC systems. You've got engineering design software. You got Wi-Fi and wired networks, printing, audiovisual stuff, smart lighting, and other Internet of Things devices and systems, collaboration software, databases, HR, storage, tools, data analytics. Everything revolves around technology. And even when these tools are not provided by IT, IT is involved. IT is looking at governance, risk, and compliance, for example, GRC. So take a second and think about some of the IT-powered technologies that go way beyond the things you immediately think of, which is the computers and the basic productivity software and tools like email and Teams and so forth. Think about all that connected technology in your organization and how it affects the lives of the people who work there. It's absolutely astounding when you think about it. So IT has a huge impact on that journey that the employee is going through from the day they come in until the day they leave. And I've seen it happen where somebody comes into work, and whether a ball got dropped somewhere along the line, or an order didn't get fulfilled, or a request didn't go through properly, or whatever, they get to work, they go through their orientation zone, they come to their desk, and there's no computer, there's no mouse, there's no keyboard. They don't have the tools that they need to start their work. And I've seen it take a week to have that, have the tools show up. That's not a good way to get started with an organization. It has a tremendous impact on end user experience. Right? Now, how do we measure this stuff? Well, there's lots of ways to measure it. This is just a quick selection of some ways to measure that I put in an ebook about digital transformation. Also, it's going to be linked in that resource sheet that you'll get. So turnover or attrition that's a really obvious way. It's the same as when we measure customer experience. You talk a lot about returning customers. Are they coming back to you? Are they repeat customers, or are they just buying one thing from you and you never see them again? That's an indicator that their experience wasn't terrific. Are people leaving your organization? It's a pretty good indication that you might have a problem. Employee satisfaction, that measurement has been around for a long time. That measures a part of the experience. It's, basically, are you satisfied with your job? Okay, well, that's a little piece of it. That's more transactional than experiential. It doesn't go through that whole journey with you. It's just today. How are you feeling today? ENPS, which is a variation on the Net Promoter Score. Would I recommend working here to my friends and family? Starting to see that in more and more organizations now, that kind of measurement. Employee operational data. Am I staying at my desk? Am I getting my work done? Am I doing a little extra? Am I being creative? Am I collaborating with my workmates? Am I showing up for meetings? Am I using the tools that I'm given? Right? All of that operational data that is available to administrative folks. And then, of course, there's pulse surveys. And those pulse surveys that come out a couple of times a year, maybe, sometimes more frequently than that are asking questions like, do you trust your management? Do you feel welcome at work? Do you have the tools that you need to do your job? See, again, that's a huge element in the overall employee experience, to have the right tools to get your work done. And IT is completely wrapped up in that, more and more every day. Right? There's another set of metrics. It's 5 metrics: quality, speed, technical knowledge, approachability, and communication. QStack, it's a company and it's a metric. It's run by a good friend of HDI, Ben Brennan. He's the CEO over there at QStack. And you can head to their website and check it out. But those 5 metrics are ones that were arrived at through extensive research by Ben and his team with end users in a bunch of large companies and smaller organizations as well. This is what people want. They rated quality as the top one. What we saw a little bit earlier from the Happy Signals report is that speed matters a lot. Speed is second here. Technical knowledge important, approachability and communication. This is how people feel in terms of being confident when they come to IT support. And the QStack metrics measured that. So if you want to know more about that, you can go check out QStack. There's been, let me ask you this question, and you can put the answer in the chat. Is anybody here using XLAs? Anybody using XLAs as opposed to SLAs? Matt says no. Richard says he loves KCS. Yes, we do. We do love KCS. We do.
Not on our side.
All right. So SLAs have been around forever. You know, that means service level agreement. My problem with SLAs has always been this. Very rarely are they about service level, and even more rarely are they agreements. Generally, they're IT saying, we're going to pick up the phone or we're going to answer your email in X amount of time, X percentage of the day. In other words, we're going to pick up the phone in 30 seconds or less, 80% of the time. That's the way a lot of SLAs are constructed. Yeah, okay, that's part of that speed equation, but it really doesn't tell you anything about the service that's being provided and how does that address your needs as an end user. An XLA is an experience level agreement, and they're set to meet or exceed expectations. Remember, I talked a little bit before about how the experience is generated by the difference between your expectations and the actual thing when it happens. You expected X, you got Y, you weren't real happy about that. Or you expected X and you got Y plus X, and you're exceedingly happy about that. So expectations have a lot to do with it. So SLAs, this is a great way to look at it. SLAs measure the process. XLAs measure the outcome and value to the group or the end user or whoever it is you're setting up these XLAs with. It's not rocket science to do XLAs. You'll have some resources on that sheet that will tell you some reading you can do real quick. Learn a little bit more about XLAs, and then you can dive into that if you want. There's some good courses out there available. I got XLA certified this year. This is what I say about this. It's a high jump contest, not a limbo contest. SLAs are a limbo contest. What can we say in our agreement? Agreement. IT is telling you the least we can put in there so that we don't get nailed when we don't abide by it. When there's a breach of SLA, we don't want to get nailed. We want to make sure that we can meet it. Yeah, okay, but that's not really the point. Let's think about what kind of experience we can provide to the end users that help them achieve their goals and provide business value to the customers of the company. Man, really, that's what it's all about, right? If it's a hospital, it's about the patients. If you're a company, it's about your customers, etc. So make it as good as you can. Sit down and negotiate experience levels. What's the experience that you want to get out of your interactions with all the things that IT provides for you? And that's how the XLA work. Here are some of the things that Hannah Price laid out on ITSM tools. Consistent service quality among analysts, right? That's been a topic for years in HDI, especially. I ask Bob a question and Bob gives me an answer, but I don't like Bob's answer. And so I call back and try to find Sheila, because I know Sheila agrees with me a lot of the time. And I'll just dial around until I get the right analyst, or I call somebody direct who's going to agree with me or give me what I want. Yeah, it shouldn't work that way. Consistent service quality among analysts, keeping customers in the loop in a satisfactory way, giving them the information that they need. Analysts being accommodating, seeing the problem from the customer perspective. Well, yes, walk a mile in my shoes, have empathy. If you ask any group of people in customer experience and customer service or technical support, if I ask you right now, what's the most important quality you can have to do a good job in support, it's going to be empathy. It pops up all the time. Empathy and patience are really important, right? Clarity about products and services. So do I know what we're supporting? Do I understand what it means to the end users? And professional levels of communication, communicating in the right way at the right time with the right tools. So that's the kinds of things that you can specify in an experience level agreement that you will never see this in an SLA. So high jump, not a limbo contest. All right. I said we have to talk about digital transformation. So here it is. As I've mentioned several times during this presentation, technology is embedded in and important to everything in businesses and institutions. Not every organization is a software company or a tech company. A lot of people have said, every company is a tech company. It's not true. I can point out some furniture polishers who are very professional at their job, and the only technology that they deal with is maybe they have a website. Other than that, they don't care. So, but for the most part, operations depend on technology from a myriad of standpoints. Communications, marketing, all of that stuff happens with tech tools, and it's a super, super department. And whether you believe that IT is a department or it's a capability, and what does that mean? Well, companies are getting away from centralized IT now, and IT savvy people are throughout the organization and all the lines of business that handle different components of how the organization interacts with technology, etc. So whether it's a department or a capability, you got to have the tech. It's got to be the right stuff. It has to be available. The capacity and the availability have to be there to produce the outcomes that the business expects, right? And digital transformation is totally wrapped around this. And as I said, if you want to know more about that, I can talk your ears off about digital transformation. And I'd be happy to do that if you connect with me at some point. So again, it's just a lot of this is just pointing out how important technology is to organizations. So what are some conclusions? And then I'll come back and we'll look at the chat and see if you have any questions or comments. Technology more important for businesses? Yes. Human qualities, including happiness, are key, right? Happy organizations are more profitable. They're seen more often in those ratings of good places to work. And absolutely key to the way things get done. And remember, again, end users rated the human interactions higher than the technical interactions. End users aren't all the same. And there's a very interesting breakdown of those 4 different groups. And so they require different service approaches. And that might give you a clue as to how you might think about experience level agreements if you want to go in that direction. How would you set up experience levels for those people who can take care of themselves, as opposed to people who might run into a problem if they try doing that. And there's lots of ways to measure employee experience, and it absolutely should be measured because it's important. So think about that. This is just a quick look at some of the things that we do at Clifton Butterfield. As you can see, customer service, customer experience, employee experience, and the appropriate technology to get things done is what we're all about. So you can talk to us about that if you'd like. That's as commercial as I get. Contact info for you. I'm going to leave that up on the screen for a minute. Give me a call, drop me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. That'd be great. That'd be great. And would love to talk to you further about any of these topics. And now I'm going to flip back over to the chat and see if you have anything to think about. And here we are. Thank you, by the way, all for coming and for putting some stuff in the chat here. Oh, you're very welcome. Any questions out there? Anything you'd like to ask about?
So, Roy, I dropped in the chat. Can you talk a little bit more about XLA and how it's related to a CSAT program? It sounds like it's much deeper and more meaningful data. I know that I'm going to take back this slide deck once I get my hands on it and see if I can incorporate it into other facets of what I work on.
Yeah, the experience level agreement is quite different. It's one of the important things about customer experience or employee experience that it's measured very frequently. You want to get experience data as close to real time as you possibly can, and that's one of the keys to the happy signals thing is people can just click as they go through their interactions, and immediately puts that response in. Get it as close to real time as possible. So satisfaction tends to be transactional. So I only rate something when, and this is a frustration I've always had too, I make a call to the service desk, I get my issue resolved or whatever, and I give a rating, and that's the customer satisfaction rating for that. Well, how come the service desk is the only place in the company that does that, right?
Yeah.
That drives me crazy. It shouldn't be that way. So one of the things about XLAs is they're becoming much more widespread. You're starting to see experience level agreements between HR and different aspects of the organization, end users. Imagine being able to rate HR. Woohoo! But yes, you rate every aspect of your interactions. So it's an ongoing interaction with all these different touch points as opposed to one thing, that transaction that you have with the service desk. So the XLA is much more all-encompassing, and you can write it up any way you want. I mean, it's very flexible. But the idea is that you say, here's what we're going to do for you in terms of the experience that you're going to have when you come here. Your expectations are going to be met or exceeded. And people know what to expect. Right now, and historically, IT sets up a service desk and has internal processes, but there's no interaction with end users to say, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we expect to provide this for you in a way that's satisfactory, right? So we're going to do that. Okay. All good? Anything else out there?
We have one more just pop up.
Oh, yeah. My boss is not a fan of use of occasional, not a fan of my use of occasional gift cards to recognize a reward. I don't overdue it a couple of times. He has said he was just doing their job. Any thoughts on this? I think recognition and reward are important. The difference between the two is also important, right? Recognition is you're doing a great job. Reward is, and your employee of the month. Be aware of those differences and make sure that the rewards are acceptable to the recipient. A lot of times people just say, hey, here's, Bob is our employee of the month. And Bob is horribly embarrassed by that. So be careful. But in terms of just doing their job, well, yeah. But on the other hand, doing your job really well is deserving of recognition. There's ways to do a job and ways to do a job. If you slouch into your desk every day and just do the bare minimum, that's one thing. If you exceed the expectations of your boss, then maybe you deserve a little recognition, or if your company is up for it, do rewards. That's a good thing. And there's lots of information out there about the positive benefits of recognition and rewards. Have your boss talk to me if they have another opinion. I'm from New Jersey. Just remember that. Have them talk to me. Just leave a written thank you note on their desk. See, what I used to do, I just walk around the buildings, all the IT areas, and I used to give out chocolate to the people who like chocolate. I just leave a little bit of dark chocolate on their desk or something like that. If they were there, I handed it to them. If they weren't, I just leave it on their keyboard. See, this is a way you get people to know you. Call it personal branding. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for your attention and for coming today. I really appreciate it. And thanks to Tri HDI for having me. I know that this chapter is back. Nice to see you guys back. I'm right down the road in South Carolina, so maybe when you have some in-person events, I'll be able to buzz up and get together with you folks and say hi. So thank you so much.
Roy, again, I want to thank you for being our program tonight. And everyone else on the call, I know Tri HDI would love to have you more involved, so reach out to us. Matt, I'll kick it back to you because I think you wanted to close out.
I wanted to thank, first of all, Roy, thank you for taking the time to come speak to us tonight. And I want to thank all of you for taking your time. Some of you, it's only 3:03, but for some of us, it's 6 o'clock, depending on where we are in the U.S. Your time is valuable. I appreciate that you've decided to spend some of it with us. If you are local to the Triangle area, please get involved. You can reach out to me directly at chapter@trihdi.com. You can also send an email to me at matt@bigfootsystems.net. Either way, you'll get a hold of me. We are, like I said, for the time being, it's kind of a wait and see game with COVID. I would like us to start moving back into meet space for meetings. Ideally, I'd like that to start happening in January, but a lot of it is just going to depend on the virus and vaccinations and mu and God knows whatever else letter decides to mutate. So I'm going to open up for just final questions. I know we're going to ask at the beginning, but if anybody has any questions about the chapter, this is kind of your opportunity. Please ask. I want to hear from people.
So Matt and the Tri Board, thanks for extending your meeting to us on the West Coast. It's good to see a few of us here. And Roy, as always, very interesting. And some of those resources were new to me, so I have grabbed that list out of the chat. So great data. I love data.
Terrific amount of data, Roy. Thank you very much. And again, thanks for including the West Coast.
Glad to have you.
I'm very glad.
I appreciate everything, Roy, and the invitation. Thanks, Richard. Comment, this was great. We hear a lot about XLAs and experience management, especially relevant in post-COVID world or as we move towards a post-COVID world, but there are a lot of Greek letters left. So who knows when that'll actually be over. One thing that was challenging is that finding the actual SLAs, because you can find books upon books on specific SLAs for portfolio, for change, for incident. So, sometimes I struggle with finding those, and I think you gave me some good direction, some good articles to look at. But one of the things that Happy Signals, by the way, Happy Signals is awesome. I would subscribe to their podcasts. I walk my dog every morning, so I wind up listening to a lot of their podcasts. I put the link in the chat if you want to connect to that. one of the things that I find difficult, I kind of lost my train of thought here. It's still 3 o'clock and I'm juggling work. More around, like Happy Signal talked about measuring experience every day. And so we do our yearly evaluations. We may do a customer satisfaction survey after every ticket's closed or every third ticket's closed. Without going too much into it, what does that look like? How do you measure experience every day?
Well, as I said, some of the tools they have, and Happy Signals is one, QStack is another one, where you're constantly measuring all along the way. Every time I interact with an IT resource, I have the opportunity to say, yeah, that was cool. Boy, that was horrible. And so what you want to do to get experience data is get that data as near to real time as you possibly can. Then you're really measuring experience. If you come back with a survey in a month from now, I might forget how it was that I bought what I bought yesterday. I might not even remember buying it. It might be just something a pen refill or something, and I get a survey that says, how was your experience buying it? I don't remember doing that. I just clicked the button. Big deal. But if you, right after it happens or during the process, have the ability to just give it a happy face or a frowny face, give it the thumbs up or thumbs down, that's going to increase the amount of data that we have overall. And all of those touch points are going to start generating data. You're going to start to see telemetry as people go through. I'm a big fan of Formula One racing, and the amount of data that streams off those race cars now is just astounding. As they go around the circuit, it's real time, and the pit folks are able to see that data as the car accelerates, as it decelerates. What are the tires doing? What's the engine doing? All of those different points that they measure. And the closer you can get to real time and measuring that, the experiences of people as they're going through their workday, the better idea of what their experience is like that you're going to have.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. Through the each touch point, sort of a microtransaction, a mini feedback as they move along the customer journey and those touch points. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm thinking with you there. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Good. Great.
Roy, we do a survey, but I have survey burnout. They feel we give them too much. What you said about a happy face or a thumbs up, that might be something that we would try that would be non-survey so that they're not getting burnt out on surveys.
So Loretta, we just at NCDIT changed our incident survey when an incident is resolved, and it is just a very simple spectrum of smiley faces, green being 5, red being 1. How did we do? All the way down, it's an empty box to say, leave us some feedback in would you like to talk to someone about your recent experience?
Okay.
That's
and do you have that tied to a ticket and an employee?
We do.
Okay.
It's coming directly out of service now to the customer that was just serviced.
Okay.
And I think yesterday when I looked at the data, we had a 16% response rate so far, which is statistically valid. It's the first time I've had statistically valid information coming back to us from a customer, because we used to have that same problem where people were burning out on a 5-page dissertation about how their interaction was. We finally got rid of that and moved to something very simple. What was your experience? How'd you like it?
That's it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Josh's hand is up.
It is. Richard, you said something very interesting. I'm very curious because I think there is a difference. Like, if we would definitely get burnout if I sent surveys for every task that we receive, right? You're able to control it with ServiceNow through specifically incidents?
We are. We do it on resolution. So once the ticket goes to resolved from a new work in progress pending to closed or resolved, the system auto closes our stuff. Once that resolved status is put in, it sends our customers an email saying, please fill this out. And then we're working on the back end of it right now. The service desk managers and my incident manager and myself get the feedback instantly once the survey is complete. We give our people, I think, 72 hours to respond to a customer and ask them about, they said they wanted someone to reach out quickly. We want to automate that as well so we can, I think, Roy, to your point, be as close to them as possible in that moment where they were either upset with service that they received so they can give us real-time feedback, because if you get too far away from the point, they go, I don't even remember filling that out. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. Go away.
Yep. And, it's a funny thing that, we try to separate the emotions out of this stuff, but satisfaction is an emotion. Your experience is packed with emotions. The human side of this is so important. And organizations a lot of times try to drain all the human aspects out of it. And Ben Brennan, the CEO of QStack, said we're having a conversation. It might even be on one of the podcasts that they did in my interview with Ben. And we talked about how organizations measure every little thing possible all the way down to the keyboard, and then beyond that, nothing. The human side of it gets lost entirely. So bringing that back in is really important. And as we've seen, the differentiation between the human aspects and the technical aspects are pretty interesting stuff. So be human.
So I want to point out
yes,
one other thing that you said that I've been advocating for as well is we look a lot at the service desk and how the service desk is performing with customers. And I think I want to highlight that after a ticket leaves the service desk, there's an experience there too. And I think we lose track of that experience after the service desk. And customers really can't tell where the service desk begins and ends in most cases.
No, and don't care.
Or do they care?
They don't.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, how did you feel? Because what's that great saying? People will forget the words you said and the things you did, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. That sentiment at the end of the day is the most important takeaway, I think.
And that's what experience is all about. It's how did you feel about this, your interactions with the organization? Do you feel good about it? If you feel good about it, chances are you're going to work hard. You're going to do your job well. All those things, if you feel good about it. So that's certainly a plus in the column of employee experience.
On the other side of it, you also get to give better feedback to your employees as well, positive and corrective, right? So that hopefully would, I think, if done correctly, make employees feel much better about the work that they're doing too.
If I could share, I heard something very interesting in a podcast. I think it was from ServiceNow. They were doing something on employee experience, and they said an organization is not going to be judged based on how they were treated before the pandemic. They're going to be judged on how they were treated during the pandemic in this post-pandemic world. So something to consider: how have we interacted and what services we've provided to our customers during this pandemic, right?
Absolutely. And it was very interesting to me to see that particular stat that with as far as getting support specifically is concerned, that's up it's the highest it's ever been in Happy Signals report. It's the highest it's ever been in the last year and a half. So it's been trending up, and now it's up 12 points overall. So it's pretty fascinating how support and same is true on the customer service side. Of course, you know I do quite a bit of work with contact centers and so forth as well, and the same thing is true over there. That when they the move was decided to everybody's got to go work from home, life changed in a heartbeat, and IT especially did a phenomenal job of making sure that people had what they needed. Organizations, hundreds, in some cases, thousands of laptops had to be distributed. The, software had to be purchased. Connections had to be verified. Protocols had to be validated. Policies had to be updated. All that stuff had to happen in a very, very short period of time. And it was absolutely miraculous to see this happen so rapidly. So everybody deserves kudos for what's been going on with the pandemic. And now, of course, we're in an uncertain aftermath where, well, maybe we are and maybe we're not, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't. and we're gonna deal
I
with
have
it
to-
as we go.
Oh, I have to ask the group, how many of you guys actually have been able to spend time changing your policy or having the policies, your current policies reflect the new norm? I know ours hasn't.
We've had a
And
lot of HR policies going around. We have an executive order from our governor on shots, testing, a whole bunch of things.
Let me
So
ask
the workplace is definitely changing.
Loretta, clarify when you say policy, because even that, any policy in particular that you're like IT policies or in general, like what policies did you have in mind when you said that word?
Personally, it's our IT. We don't have at our corporation site operating procedures, which they would more likely be the XLA. But internally, because we are an energy company, we have to adhere to NERC for California and all that. But those are, we've whittled it down to 4 or 5 policies, but there are 35 policies we haven't touched. And it is something that is on everybody's mind. But until one of us falls into a deep hole and it has to has to be worked on, I just don't see right now, with all the ups and downs of what's going on, when that is going to materialize.
I think, speaking just for myself, the big issue that we've had here, cybersecurity fears. We've had very frantically rolled out MFA. It came from find an authenticator, which in the next revision was no, Microsoft Authenticator, get rid of the other brands. We're also, because we're an education institution, ITS vetted and haphazardly rolled out remote proctoring, and that's from a policy that's been a nightmare, because someone thought, we should have remote proctoring, and nobody ever designed anything. It was just, here, find this company. And then the next thing you know, we're getting emails. Even people at ITS don't necessarily know how to roll this out, how it's going to interact with secondary products that we throw in. So I think for us, from the IT perspective, the big thing has been cybersecurity. It's been like a frantic lockdown. As soon as cryptoware, ransomware latches onto something, 3 days later, hey, we need to do this. We need to make this change. It's like 2 steps ahead and then 5 steps behind.
I agree. It's like holding oil in your hand. And not olive.
Perhaps mercury. And just as dangerous.
Yes. Well, I'm glad I'm not in it alone, you guys.
Yeah, we've definitely again some policy changes on, personally speaking from our end, but from a support perspective, it really didn't change much because we sort of allowed our employees to work from home already. So from a support policy perspective, it made things a bit easier for us, to be honest, because hands-on support is good when it's an actual hardware issue, but most things can be solved remotely. I think the bigger challenge is happening to us now, to be honest with you, in regards to the new policies in North Carolina, with vaccination requirements, so it's made things very interesting on, how you schedule folks, right? And things like that. But we're getting there, I think. It's going better than I expected, to be honest with you.
The one other thing I would point out is the paradigm shift. Now that everyone's so used to working from home and being able to work remote, I think that there's still a very strong push to get people back into offices. And I don't really think that a lot of people are going to be thrilled. A lot of employees will not be thrilled with that perspective.
Oh, I am. I am so ready. I am so ready.
That's one.
Hey, Richard, I think there was some study, I don't know if it was one of the podcast listeners or something, about it was a high percentage, I forget, maybe somebody knows better than I, but a high percent said that if they were forced to return back to work, they would quit and find other employment. And I think
Yeah.
that was particularly true among the millennials. Sorry.
Well,
No offense to millennials here.
for us IT folks, I mean, we've always worked remote, right? I remember dialing in to a 56K modem to reset servers. Okay. Working remote is not exactly a new thing for IT people.
No.
Yeah, but
Although
the office, even if you worked remote. So there is a slight different slicing of the onion. It's been interesting at the community college I work at in California, a big push for the schools K-12 to go back in the classroom. The public wanted it, parents wanted it. So for the college, although we were scheduled to be online again for fall, fairly soon before the semester started, the push was to go to at least 50% face-to-face. However, we are having much better enrollment in online classes.
Mm-hmm.
So although there's sort of a hue and cry for being face-to-face, and teachers that I know in the K-12, because we have a pretty high vaccination rate here, and we're feeling pretty secure about the numbers, even though Delta is increasing. So the K-12 teachers that are teaching, the county has done a lot to take care of the teachers, I should say. But still, when it comes down to it, a lot of students in the community college and also in the K-12, their feet are staying in their house.
I have 2 kids in K-12, and we did the virtual academy all last year, and they were very happy to return to school.
So
Are they 100% or is it mixed?
They are 100% back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our schools are also. It's just been, like I said, at the community college, it's been interesting to see that. So
well, I worry about the developmental side of it too, right?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Socializing.
Yeah, absolutely critical skill that I'm not perfect at, by the way.
But you went in the classroom every day, right? So
You're in IT.
all kinds of lessons that we're going to learn.
Josh, give me a pass. I'm an IT nerd. Thanks, Josh.
Good, Josh.
So
Good looking out. Fist bump.
The end of our meeting time, and I have some things that I can add, but I do not want to add on video.
Oh, you're still recording.
I'd like to just, again, I cannot thank the board enough. Amy Lynn, Tom, Richard, Josh, you make this happen. I just kind of sit behind the curtain and direct folks. I cannot tell you all how much I appreciate what you do to make this chapter run. Can I get someone on the board to move to turn the recording off and stop the meeting?
I move we wrap this thing up because it's been awesome, but it is getting late.
Can I get a
Second
second?
that.
Boom. So we're going to stop the recording.